In order, clerk would call the roll.
Pacino,
Here.
Heisler White,
Here.
Moody,
Here.
O'Toole,
Here.
Schneider,
Here.
and Matamore.
Here.
As 6 present, 0 absent, and 1 vacancy.
I understand before we approve the agenda, there's an addition to the agenda. Phil?
Indeed, Mr. Chair, you received a message from us on Friday regarding a resolution that we brought to you before regarding the boards and commissions funds that are available for this board, $3,000 in total. And we proposed in that resolution that we use approximately $700 worth of that to go towards new development signs that will increase transparency of projects that require public hearings. You've seen them around town. There are those red ones. A QR code with a link to more information. So we figured that may be a good use of these funds, but that is what that item is about.
So what item number will we give it?
We can make it the first item.
Okay, that'd be
under new business.
New business 6B, I guess, little a. All right, Chair will entertain a motion on the agenda and the previous meeting minutes. With the addition. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Agenda and minutes are approved. Do we want to do citizen comments for non-agenda related items? If you have something you want to address the commission about that is not on the agenda, please feel free to come up and speak your piece. Do we have anybody online?
Nope.
Not seeing or hearing anybody? We'll move on to Planning Commission staff reports and comments.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, we have 2 announcements this evening. As you all know, we're updating the comprehensive plan continuing on this year. We started in the summer last year. Part of the public engagement efforts we're doing is the establishment of a pop-up space in the Laramie Main Street office downtown. They've graciously allowed us to rent half of the space of their office space down there, which is right across the street from Coal Creek, very central location, to use as an exhibit space for materials associated with the comprehensive plan and getting input. So in a way, think of it as an indoor farmer's market with a lot with materials that won't fly away, right? They're going to be indoors. So we obtained funding from AARP to pay for the rent and for the materials, about $10,000. So it will be a robust space that's going to be staffed by one of us 3 days a week in the afternoon. So we're going to make that all public through social media, make sure everyone is aware. I just want to let everyone know that we're setting up this Thursday. So that means on Friday, the 16th, it will be up and running, and one of us will be there in the afternoon to walk people through the space and get more information from the public on the vision of Laramie and how they want to see Laramie grow in 20 years. So that's the first announcement. Second announcement is regarding the statewide rail plan that WYDOT is currently seeking public input on. We can send this link out, but I just wanted to make this commission aware, as well as the public at large, that the survey is on WYDOT's site right now. Just type in WYDOT statewide rail plan, you'll get to it. It's, as from what I can see, pretty intuitive to take the survey, provide your comment in that way. We as the, well, Derek as the Community Economic Development Director has provided comment at that level, but citizen comment is also welcome. I just wanted to make everyone aware of that. But those are our two announcements.
All right, thank you. Disclosures. Any disclosures, ex parte communications, or any such matters? Hearing none, we'll carry on. We have no old business, or, well, let's see, any current planning projects besides old business and what's on the agenda?
You're going to hear about them. So,
Okay. All right. Yep. And please don't give us any more War and Peace size documents until last minute.
we figured you need something to do over Christmas break. So,
Yeah, right. Yeah, except we just got it Monday. All right. Who's up for the Reconnect West Laramie plan? Oh yeah, we have the resolution. All those in favor of the new signs, which actually I suggested the QR code to Philip at a meeting. So all those in favor, say aye. Oh, we need a motion.
Yeah, motion to approve resolution 2026-03.
03 resolutions 3.
Yeah.
All right. Donald, you want to do it?
I move this resolution 2026-03 of the City of Laramie Planning. Let's try this again. I move we support resolution 2026-03 of the City of Laramie's Planning Commission, designating use of discretionary funds appropriated by the governing body for a governmental business purpose.
Do I hear a second? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Your resolution carries. Now we get to the matter at hand of the Reconnect West Laramie plan. Take it away, Philip.
okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. Today, we take an important next step with the Reconnect West Laramie plan. As you know, this plan has been in development for the past year. And this afternoon, we're asking Planning Commission to adopt the plan as well as certify the final plan to City Council for their adoption as well. So this plan is the result of a year-long planning effort funded through a $250,000 grant from the Federal Highway Administration. And it reflects not only extensive technical analysis, but also innovative and highly engaged methods of community outreach. So from a snowy walkthrough of West Laramie in January 2025, back when we actually had snow, and when it was so cold, at that point we had to find shelter at the Yumbana gluten-free bakery for warmth and a gluten-free key lime pie, to a sun-soaked booth in the middle of Laradise summer at Laramie's signature Freedom Has a Birthday event. This plan was built through every season and every corner of the West Laramie neighborhoods. In addition to a robust online presence where we did several surveys and had information throughout the project, we've been at farmers markets, other community events, and even going door to door along Snowy Range Road to speak directly with businesses on the ground and meet them where they are. And most recently, our community bike ride allowed us to experience West Laramie the way many residents do, at a human pace, seeing opportunities and challenges up close, and demonstrating how the plan's recommendations can bridge key infrastructure gaps that impact safety for all modes of transportation. All of these moments, all these conversations, and all of this on-the-ground experience make this plan what it is. We feel it's truly built from real community voices, real lived experiences, and real time spent walking, biking, and talking with the people who know West Laramie best. The plan in front of you today addresses long-standing challenges: connectivity, safety, mobility, reinvestment, and land use. while honoring the history, character, and aspirations of the people who call West Laramie home. Provides a clear, actionable roadmap for improving crossings, strengthening walkability, supporting local businesses, enhancing public spaces, and guiding responsible development in the future. Most importantly, where the rubber hits the road here, it lays out 37 targeted recommendations organized in a phased tiered roadmap that shows what we can tackle immediately, what's on deck, and how we can keep the effort moving forward in the long haul. So this afternoon, our consultant partner on the project from the consultant group DJ&A, Bill Delo, will walk you through the plan and its recommendations in detail. I just want to say from the outset that the team, DJ&A and their subs, we're committed to delivering a plan shaped by intensive public input and focused on practical, workable solutions. And we feel they've delivered. Bill and his team have been outstanding to work with, responsive to community voices, diligent in their analysis, and intentional in ensuring that every recommendation is both visionary in its direction and realistic in its implementation. So again, the action that we're hoping from this body tonight is to get a formal adoption as well as a certification to City Council for their adoption of the plan so that we can obtain use this adoption to obtain future funding for implementation of these recommendations in the future. So thank you again, and I'd invite Bill up for a presentation. Bill, take it away.
If the clerk, if you could, can you turn that TV so the audience can see it better? Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Philip, and good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. Happy to be back here almost 365 days since the last time that we presented when we introduced the project. And yeah, really excited to share with you some of the work that we've done over the past year and provide an overview for the Reconnect West Laramie Plan. There we go. So a brief refresher, our project purpose and objectives. There were 5 primary objectives that really provide the guidance for our work on the plan. First is creating intuitive connections for all ages and abilities. We want streets, sidewalks, pathways to work for kids, seniors, and everyone in between. We want to expand access to jobs, services, education, and recreation, especially for residents of West Laramie and the West Side. We also worked quite a bit with Mary and her team throughout our process and their work on the 10-year Transportation Master Plan, which you'll hear about after our presentation, and really tried to coordinate our recommendations and our analysis with their work to make sure that we have 2 plans that really work in sync together. And this is very much a multimodal plan. We're looking to enhance connectivity for vehicles, for pedestrians, for cyclists, basically anyone who's moving, rolling, walking through West Laramie, West Side, and the full city. And then finally on the list, but certainly very important, improving safety for pedestrians and cyclists throughout our project area. Some of the key highlights of our project, Philip alluded to several of them in his opening. We engaged with over 400 people, 400 residents throughout the project process in person through the different pop-up events and other activities that we did throughout the year. Over 260 people engaged with our 2 online surveys throughout the process as well. So certainly really positive numbers in terms of the number of people that we were able to touch bases with, speak with, and understand their needs and challenges in terms of traveling around the city. We also conducted more than 10 different stakeholder meetings with different stakeholders. This included YDOT, WyoTech, the university, resident groups within West Side, as well as businesses in West Laramie to understand what their concerns are and challenges were around mobility and connectivity within the city. And as Philip noted, that resulted in the identification of 37 different improvement strategies that we'll walk through and talk about this evening. So we're all pretty familiar with the different barriers. There are major barriers to connectivity that separate West Side, West Laramie, and the eastern or central portions of Laramie. This includes crossing the interstate, crossing the Union Pacific Railroad. The river also can be an impediment or a barrier to connectivity depending on your location within the project area. There's limited transit services available to residents living west of the Union Pacific Corridor. Snowy Range Road is a great vehicular connection, but it's not very inviting if you're walking or cycling. It can be very difficult to get across if you're walking and cycling as well. And then on a smaller scale, there's just a variety of different multimodal infrastructure gaps, missing sidewalks along a block, missing bike lanes that also just make it a little bit more challenging for people to be able to circulate and travel within the project study area. So as we went through the community engagement process and our technical analysis, looking at those different barriers and how do we solve them, we identified 5 different opportunity corridors that really presented the best opportunities for improving connectivity east-west across the city. So these 5 corridors are shown here on this slide. In the next couple of slides, I'll walk through a little bit more detail about the different strategies, projects, and improvements that we're proposing along each of those corridors. But before doing that, I want to talk a little bit more about the engagement effort and who we talked to. As I mentioned on the earlier slide, the stakeholder meetings. This slide lists out all the different stakeholders that we met with throughout our process to gather input and feedback. Probably one of the more extensive engagement efforts with stakeholders was with YDOT. We met with them multiple times throughout this process. They've reviewed the draft document as well and had the opportunity to provide comments because we have several crossings of YDOT operated facilities such as the interstate and Snowy Range Road, as well as proposing improvements along Snowy Range. It was very important to get YDOT's kind of sign off at this stage, at least preliminarily, to make sure that what we were proposing did have legs to move forward as the city moves into design and towards implementation as well. In terms of community engagement, there were 2 primary phases to our community engagement effort. Phase 1 occurred in the spring in the March to May time period, really focused on gathering input around challenges and needs for connectivity and mobility. It included an online map-based survey where residents were able to identify different points where they have challenges in terms of being able to get around town and they'd like to see types of improvements. This engagement also included an extensive amount of support from University of Wyoming students who conducted several pop-up events around the community to gather input and reach out to the community where they were. They were at the footbridge, they were at Bud's Bar, they went to a lot of different places and talked with a lot of people who wouldn't normally attend a formal public meeting or open house. So it was really great to hear from the community in that way. Phase 2 occurred primarily during the summer and into the fall. This was really focused on refining our strategies, getting community input on the different strategies and ideas, providing an opportunity to have community input towards prioritization as well, and which projects were most important to people and that they would like to see first. And this also was the phase that we had the community bike ride that Philip mentioned. And we also utilized a lot of pop-up events, the farmers market, Jubilee Days, Freedom Has a Birthday, a lot of events that occurred at the summer and taking advantage of people being outdoors and out doing things. So I'll walk now through our proposed strategies. This map provides an overview of all 37, but the next few slides will kind of go corridor by corridor and provide a little bit more detail in terms of the improvements that we're proposing within each corridor. So working from north to south, we'll start up at the top with the Curtis Corridor. There's 6 corridors or 6 improvements proposed for this corridor, really primarily focused on pedestrian and bicycle improvements, addressing those kind of smaller gaps or focused gaps within a corridor that help to create a fully connected corridor that people feel is low stress and very convenient and comfortable to travel. So it includes improvements at the interstate with both the on and off ramps along the south side of the roadway where the existing multi-use pathway is. Additional opportunities to connect to that pathway there, as you see in projects 3 and 4 near the Laramie River. One of the focal or kind of highlighted projects within the plan was project number 5, which is proposed to be a protected intersection at 3rd and 4th Streets with the intersection with Curtis and Reynolds. This is a great opportunity to enhance pedestrian and cyclist crossing at these two signalized intersections and make these crossings safer and more comfortable for people. And then looking for ways to improve the existing bike lanes along Reynolds as it goes to the east, connecting to the schools that are present on the north side of the city along Reynolds and close by. The Madison-Flint corridor, moving to the next corridor to the south, is really one of our key kind of central Laramie corridors, making a direct connection from West Laramie through the west side and then to central Laramie. This corridor builds on the parallel city project, the West Laramie Connector, the multi-use path that's shown in the black dashed line there right in the center, and basically uses that multi-use path as a springboard to propose additional improvements to the west in West Laramie and then to the east, both within the west side and then on the east side of the Union Pacific Rail Corridor. Again, a lot of focus on pedestrian and bicycle connections, really trying to leverage that planned and in design city project and multi-use pathway there. We did evaluate in this location an additional potential crossing of the Union Pacific Rail Corridor north of the Garfield Footbridge. This project is included in the tiers, but it's more of a lower tier. As we go through the next couple corridors, you'll see that the Spring Creek Corridor crossing was identified by the community as a more, I guess, more of a priority project or greater interest for that project. And so that project is ranked higher, but did want to highlight that location there. The Garfield corridor strategies, again, really build on existing infrastructure. The Garfield Footbridge is a great community amenity asset for connectivity across the Union Pacific Rail Corridor. So we really looked for ways to build on that connection and make it easier and more convenient for people to be able to access the footbridge, both west and east of the Union Pacific Corridor. To the west, there's several improvements proposed, especially along Snowy Range Road, as well as on roadways in West Laramie to enhance connections for walking and biking within West Laramie, getting across the interstate and then getting to the footbridge. And then on the east side, we've proposed bikeway improvements to Garfield Street as it goes east towards the university in eastern Laramie to better make that connection once people come across the footbridge. Within the plan, you'll also note that we had signature projects at the two landings of the footbridge, enhancing the pedestrian area at both locations so that there's more of a sense of arrival and better pedestrian and bicycle amenities at both ends of the footbridge as you're in downtown and also in the west side. The Spring Creek Corridor has probably one of the most ambitious proposals and strategies, and that's a new crossing of the Union Pacific Rail Corridor, either as a new roadway that would include bicycle and pedestrian facilities together with the roadway, or as a pedestrian and bicycle only facility that would cross the railroad and then provide a connection to the Greenbelt Trail as well as to the Spring Creek Corridor on the east. If there's a roadway or if the roadway strategy is pursued, there's also projects and strategies within this corridor for then crossing the interstate to the west and then making connections over to the area around Wyotech and Venture Drive on the west. So really probably the most ambitious and longer term corridor, just given the magnitude of the projects, the coordination required with Union Pacific, and the cost of those projects as well. The fifth corridor at the far south is the Riverside Corridor. This very much is kind of a long-term, future-looking corridor. There's not a lot of development or population down in this part of the city today, but it is certainly an area that will be growing over the next 20 to 30 years. So as we looked at opportunities in the future, as this portion of the city starts to grow, there's several existing pieces of infrastructure that could be good basis for improving and creating a multimodal connectivity corridor. There's an existing at-grade crossing of the Union Pacific Rail Corridor, a project number 4 on this map, and there's also a crossing of the Laramie River at project number 2 on this map that the city could utilize to leverage to provide improvements in this corridor and serve the southern portions of the city as well as unincorporated portions of Albany County. And then finally, we also identified a series of off-corridor strategies. These are improvements that don't necessarily fit in those 5 east-west corridors. They're primarily north-south connections, and they help to make sure that the residences and neighborhoods that are located between the 5 different east-west corridors have really good connectivity to those main spines that move east-west. So really a focus on smaller north-south improvements that are really easy to implement and could provide a lot of bang for your buck in terms of implementation and building on improvements within the primary east-west corridors. And then this map here shows those locations. You can see primarily running north-south, making connections to primarily the central corridors, the Garfield corridor, Madison, Flint, and Curtis as well. So I'll now talk a little bit about our prioritization strategy and the tiers that Philip mentioned and how we're tiering projects and recommending them for implementation. So there's 3 tiers in total that we've identified, and the projects were analyzed based upon their ability to meet the project goals, their feasibility for implementation, potential timeline or likely timeline for their implementation, cost, as well as community support. And really the objective of the tiers is to identify projects that are not only achievable and provide benefits for connectivity, but also projects that have strong community support. The projects that are identified within Tier 1 are really designed to be near-term improvements, the ones that are recommended to be the first movers and be implemented to really provide that baseline connectivity within the project area and for the city. The projects within tiers 2 and 3 typically have a longer timeline, whether because those projects are a bit more complex and they need more work in terms of design or perhaps coordination with stakeholders such as YDOT and Union Pacific, or they may be a bit more expensive as well, and there's going to be some more time involved with gathering the funds, applying for grant funds, and tracking down the funds to be able to implement those projects. Tier 3 projects are also a bit more future-looking, forward-looking. They're probably 15, 20, 25 years out, whether that's because of waiting for new development or just waiting for other connectivity improvements in order to make those as impactful as they could possibly be. The next couple slides highlight the projects that are located within each tier. Within Tier 1, again, noted a lot of projects that have significant community support. We heard a lot of support for projects along Garfield and the Garfield corridor. This corridor is also a great one to prioritize just because of that benefit to be able to leverage the footbridge and that existing connectivity asset within the city and make those connections to connect to that infrastructure. We've also identified projects along Curtis, that protected intersection that I mentioned, improvements along Madison Flint to tie into the multi-use path, and then some other supporting improvements along the Spring Creek corridor, primarily in the West Laramie area to make connections to existing infrastructure, such as the multi-use pathway that exists along Adams Street. Tier 2 improvements broaden our strategies across multiple corridors and more corridors, including Madison Flint, Spring Creek, and then off-corridor improvements that would really branch off of the Garfield Street corridor improvements. This is where we have some of those improvements, including the, you'll see SC5 there in blue in the middle, the new bike and pedestrian crossing over the Union Pacific Rail Yard between the 3rd Street and the Greenbelt Trail. So this is, even though it's a project the community was really interested in, we're very much cognizant that a project like that and a crossing of the Union Pacific Railroad requires coordination with UP, and will probably take some time, both from that as well as from a cost standpoint to implement. So that's why it's a Tier 2 project. And then the Tier 3 project, as I mentioned, are kind of those longer term projects, maybe because they're dependent on other types of improvements and strategies that are identified in Tiers 1 and 2. They may have additional coordination with outside agencies, or they're waiting for new development and additional development into the future. And then the final slide just highlights our next steps, or the city's next steps as you move forward. We've highlighted five or six different key items, continuing to collaborate with the Union Pacific Railroad and YDOT, as well as other project partners for implementation of projects, potential joint funding and pursuit of funding for projects as well. This plan is really set up to be a guide for implementation of projects, pursuit of grant funding. A lot of grants require projects to be identified and adopted plans, so this is really the first step to move towards obtaining additional funding for project implementation. We've included within the plan a list of different grant funding programs that are available, both at the state and federal level, that the city could apply for or partner with the county or YDOT to apply for. So there's a lot of opportunity to pursue funding and funding to implement these projects. As funding is obtained, that's the opportunity to move into design. Really the projects that are in here, the concepts you see at this stage really are just concepts. They do require more detailed design to flesh out the design and make sure that that design is finalized and workable and meets both the city standards and where applicable YDOT standards as well. And throughout the process, as the projects move to implementation, certainly the city will look to continue involving the community, have them be part of this effort as the projects move into design and implementation. And so that concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Anybody want to start? Sure.
Thank you, Bill. That's a very good presentation. Could you describe sort of what the interaction and the opinions were from like Wildtech and I guess the West Side League of Neighbors? I'd like to kind of get a sense of the level of desire and real participation from West Side.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah, I think that's a great question. So yeah, as I mentioned, we did a specific stakeholder meeting with the West Side League of Neighbors to get their feedback and input in terms of the types of improvements that they would like to see. There was definitely, I think, a strong interest from that group in terms of enhancing connections to the footbridge. First, preserving the footbridge, recognizing that it's a great historical landmark within the city. It's a great connectivity piece for West Side to downtown and the remainder of the city. But there definitely through that conversation was interest in improving connectivity to that footbridge through the West Side. So, looking for opportunities to fill in missing sidewalks, making connections to Optimus Park, I think was something that we heard. There was a lot of interest in there, just so that people were able to access the park from throughout the West Side, and then as well as people coming over the footbridge being able to access the park, and then crossing of Snowy Range Road. So whether that be crossing Snowy Range Road or just being able to access it and using it to get over the Union Pacific Corridor, making sure that there were safe and convenient ways to be able to make those connections to Snowy Range Road. In terms of Wyotech, we did hear a lot about, there's certain, I think with Wyotech, there's a lot of students that do drive to school and use vehicles to make that commute. But there was strong interest from both students as well as administration at Wyotech for having other ways for students to be able to access the campus. I think as Wyotech has grown and as they've started to draw more students from outside the area and students that need housing here locally within Laramie while they're going to school, a lot of those students are now living on the east side of the city because there's just not enough housing around the campus and in West Laramie. And so having connections, we heard a lot of interest in connections, especially bicycle and pedestrian connections along the south side of the city for those students to be able to have an alternative if they don't have a car with them or if they don't have a working car to be able to get to the campus.
Less focus on the footbridge as much as maybe the southern.
Correct. More on the southern side. We also heard an interest for transit services as well, and so I think that was a link with the 10-year transportation plan. Yeah, is just having more options for how people could make that connection and make that travel.
Chair, I'm sorry. Could whoever's when you're speaking, please turn the microphone on for the people listening online. We got a comment that
Will do.
said that. Yeah, thanks.
Anybody else? Donald?
So several questions. One is, how old is the footbridge and how sound is the footbridge?
Age. I want to say it's close to 100 years old, close to it, right? I think it was 20s or 30s that it was implemented.
Certainly, it goes back to the beginnings of West Side. So I think as long as that's been there, but as far as the soundness of the bridge, I mean, I couldn't tell you the last time it was like studied, similar to the West Side Connector trestle or trail bridge that um, they just stated that that one is totally fine, doesn't need to be reconstructed. But I can't tell you but it's recent. I mean, UP has given assurances that that bridge is sound.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uh, did you talk with, congratulations on the plan, by the way. I thought this was a really good, thoughtful, well laid out plan. Uh, what's your sense of UP's position on this? Are they sympathetic? Are they lukewarm?
I would say,
Icy?
yeah, at this point, they're open to having a conversation, and we had hoped to have an initial meeting with their consultant this past week, but he ended up being on last second leave, so we're waiting to have our kind of official engagement with them. But up to this point, they've at least been open to having conversations about the potential for a crossing. So I don't think we know quite enough yet to grade it in terms of lukewarm or icy or what that may be, but they're at least open to beginning conversations and having those initial conversations about the potential for a new crossing.
So last question is about the Spring Creek corridor. That one looks like it's going to be pretty complicated and expensive. Is that correct?
I would say yes. There's crossing the railroad and crossing the interstate will be complicated to navigate for sure.
I have some concerns about safety there. That's a very complicated area in terms of I-80, and I'm always careful just driving through that area. I just, do you have any safety concerns about just given the nature of how much traffic there is, and especially with people just kind of coming to town, not knowing town? It always seems to me a dangerous area.
With the I-80 crossing for that Spring Creek corridor, we'd be proposing that to be grade separated. So more than likely, given the height of the interstate there, because it's an embankment,
Right.
If a roadway was extended there, it would be underneath the interstate. So there wouldn't be kind of interaction between interstate traffic and the roadway traffic. And at least at this stage within the plan, we haven't proposed that to be an interchange. So no entry or exit to the freeway. It would just be that the roadway would pass underneath the interstate and then make that connection. So from a safety standpoint, no real concerns since the traffic on the interstate and on the roadway would be fully separated.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just add to that, Bill, if I may, Chair. The completion of Bill Nye, so when it finally does get built to 3rd Street, I mean, there is a signalized, a signal that is supposed to go, or that will go in there once Bill Nye is completely constructed. Any recommendations here for that corridor would take that into account so that there would be a protected intersection to get across 3rd to Spring Creek and beyond.
Anybody else? I got a couple of questions and an idea. I'll give you my idea first. I occasionally come up with good ones. When I was in Edinburgh, they had a similar problem crossing the extensive railway at the Edinburgh train station, and they had their original bridge, and they built another one to the north of the station, and they put an elevator in there so that you could, big enough, you could put your bicycle in it and take the elevator up to the bridge, push it across the bridge, and an elevator to go down. And they had a man lift elevator, a human elevator on the south side. There's an idea for you to cogitate, since money seems to be no object on this plan here. All right. I mean, that's the question I have is, this is so bicycle and pedestrian centric a plan that my question is, you say in the beginning of the plan that this will help employment opportunities. Now, if you lived on the west side or West Laramie and did not work on Third Street, how would this enable you to get to work any better?
Yeah, so from a vehicular standpoint, certainly the Spring Creek corridor is a longer term corridor with that roadway connection within there is certainly beneficial. Really, from a vehicular standpoint, we see Snowy Range Road as a great connectivity opportunity and a really good connection across, and also Curtis as well. So I think as you see the bicycle and pedestrian improvements, one of the key items from a vehicular standpoint, if we are adding sidewalks, if we're adding multi-use paths, that's an opportunity for, today those cyclists and pedestrians are traveling within the roadway, they're traveling on the shoulder. There's potential conflicts at intersections and with safety as you're driving along those corridors with those other modes traveling. They have their own dedicated facilities. It helps to make the entire roadway function more safely and improves that connectivity and reduces the potential for collisions and that then would cause delays. So I think it's primarily along the existing corridors. They provide great vehicular connections, and it's really enhancing those corridors and making sure that they're truly multimodal and that all modes are able to operate efficiently and safely along those corridors.
That didn't answer my question, but I'll take it. So you haven't examined any idea of cost? I mean, we're talking about a lot of sidewalk on this plan.
There is it's definitely, I would say, ambitious in terms of the number of projects and the cost of those.
Yeah.
We did look at this, and we were instructed certainly by the city staff, to not be cost constrained at this point. It is very much a visionary plan, identifying what the needs are, and then it's really to be used as a tool in the future to be able to pursue funding opportunities through state and federal sources. There's a significant number of grants available, so it's certainly not improvements that are all on the city through city general funds to implement. There's lots of different ways to pursue and obtain funding to make these improvements. Some of the smaller scale improvements, such as sidewalks, bike lanes, other improvements like that, could also be coordinated with future development as well, and could be mitigations or conditions of approval for new development as they come in and see opportunities for these connections to enhance their development. So it's very much, the plan was very much set up to be ambitious and really identify all the different needs and potential solutions, and then provide a roadmap, recognizing that it's a long-term roadmap and an expensive roadmap, but a roadmap towards the implementation of these improvements.
Anybody else? Hearing nothing. Thank you very much. It was a good presentation. I'd like to open it up for public comment. Anybody wishes to speak on this, please feel free to come up, speak your piece. Anybody? Wendy, I knew you'd have something to say.
Does this bend? Okay. Is it at the top? Okay, for us shorties, thank you. My name is Wendy Chapman. I've lived on the west side for 27 years. I did get to attend one of the small meetings. I just want to endorse part of two different plans. In order to move foot and bicycle traffic away from Snowy Range Road and going under the interstate where there's so much traffic, it would be nice to, if we could only do one of these routes, okay? I'd say the Madison Flint from the west from West Laramie under the interstate on the old rail bed, the dotted line on the map, and then connect somewhere to the Garfield footbridge. Because that makes the most sense to me. Okay, let's see what else I wrote down. I scribbled a lot of notes. Oh, that we don't need another footbridge to the north. That was one of the ideas. I don't think we need a footbridge between Snowy Range Road, no, not Snowy, yeah, Snowy Range Road / Harney Bridge and the footbridge. And one of my neighbors did suggest the south bridge near the interstate because it would connect to the green belt. And I know that would be complicated and expensive. The other way, Madison Flint to Garfield, connecting somewhere on the west side, is central, and probably, again, less expensive. And that's if we were, I don't know if we're only doing one path or if we're doing more than one. Okay. Let's check. In order to create a loop. Oh, yes, one more thing. I'm wondering if when this is done, if there will be a north-south path to the east with the goal of ending up with a loop around a green belt loop for bicycles and pedestrians. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Chairman Matamore, Sarah Brown Matthews.
Right.
I'm a member of the Laramie Parks and Rec, Parks, Trees and Rec Advisory Board, and also the Tourism Board. And I just want to compliment this plan. I really love the large breadth and scope of it, and the fact that it opens up a huge variety of options for us to work with in the future. I would encourage you to approve it so that the details and the actual plans can be decided on in the future, and funding can be sought. But I just really loved seeing that there were all these different corridors, all these very creative different ideas that helped me think about portions of town that I really wasn't that familiar with. So I won't take any more of your time, but thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Tom?
My name is Tom Schmidt. I've lived in West Laramie for about 40 years. I didn't realize that West Laramie was so disconnected from East Laramie. It was not a revelation to me. I drove over here on a 4-lane road over a 4-lane bridge, and there's connections all over. To the north is Curtis. To the south is the interstate. I see people walking on those bridges, driving their bikes on those bridges. I didn't realize it was such a struggle. But so I've listened to the presentations here. What a lot of people don't understand is that people who live in West Laramie really don't want a lot of connection with East Laramie. That's why we live there. To us, a lot of bad ideas come from East Laramie. We just want to be left alone. We don't need a bunch of trespassers. I mean, if you're too weak to ride a bike over the bridges that are there, maybe you should stay home. The presenters avoided the issue of costs at all costs, it seems like. Anybody have a figure on any of these plans? 5, 10, 20 million? We won't know the cost till when? Till it's too late. You guys vote on it and we got to approve it, then we got to figure out how much it's going to cost. I mean, I would be all for it. The people who are in favor of this can pay for it out of pocket. That would be a good idea to me. But there's a lot of people really not interested in this. They just don't see the problems. Grants, there's a lot of talk about grants, but a grant is just another fancy name for tax money. There's no such thing as a grant tree that grows money and you pick it off, you know. All grants are tax money from somewhere. There's no free money. Yeah, so I don't know where all these grants are going to come from. The state or the feds, or maybe Union Pacific will kick in some money. I sure want if I were them. But, you know, the city of Laramie is not really a money-making town. There's no industry here to speak of, really. It's a service economy town. And what the city of Laramie should be focused on is some industrial manufacturers here to get some real wages, some real workers here. We need what would be good for Laramie is a lot of guys with 50, 60, and $70,000 a year jobs apart from the university. That's what Laramie should be focused on, rather than bike trails and bed and breakfasts and tattoo parlors. There's no money. You can't build an economy off that. Pizza places, there's no economy there. But I had not heard of any of these meetings. I don't know how widespread they were or what the publicity was, but I get intentionally avoided from surveys and meeting notifications. I think I'm on a blacklist because I never heard of any of these. But if there's one coming up, I'll have Tom call me. So I'm there. But anyway, thanks for your time. Good luck. I hope I don't have to pay for any of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please feel free. We're here to listen. Well, anybody online? Well, what's the will of the commission here?
Well, I would, just for discussion, I think they did a great job. There's all kinds of ideas out there, and remember that this is just a plan. This is just something that you could pull it off the shelf if you need it, and give you some framework in which to address questions and plans. So, and I really appreciate the last gentleman's comments. You know, whether the idea of connectiveness between West Laramie and Central and East Laramie, whether it's mostly East, you know, Central Laramie folks wanting to have another place to walk and want to walk over to West Laramie and walk back, or whether it's a real desire of West Laramie residents to do it, you know, whether it's a 80% Central Laramie wanting to, you know, to have another walking path to the west, or whether West, I just don't know whether it's an equal flow between the two communities. And certainly something to always keep in mind about what West Laramie wants. It seems like there was a lot of input and trying to get that feedback from West Laramie. But West Laramie is a very unique community. And some of the things the gentleman said, I've heard before and felt quite a bit. So anyways, I'm not really saying much, but I'm more than happy to support this plan, and it was well done, and it's a resource, but it's not a done deal.
Well, if I may, anybody else want to go first? But if I may, coming from a construction background, a plan tells you how to do something. All right. This is a plan, but it's a wish list. I think more of a wish list than a plan. I would like, if before we go a hell of a lot further down the road of actually building these things, to see a real plan. I mean, to me, how the hell do you get a bicycle safely across on Curtis at 3rd and 4th Street without some major construction, some participation from the State Highway Department? You have the cement trucks coming up 3rd Street and turning on Curtis to get to the interstate. And then you have trucks coming off of the interstate to get to Walmart driving up Reynolds. There's a lot of truck traffic right there. And then you have all the trucks going north on 287. So I see real serious safety concerns with this, and it's going to take a lot of engineering to make it work. I wish we had more engineering and less we want it on this plan. So as a plan goes, this is no better or no worse than the rest of the city plans and we get, and I appreciate all the work and effort going into it. And currently, I don't know whether to vote for this or not, but I would like to see connections between West Laramie and downtown. I've always been in favor of that. I thought the Garfield Bridge was way inadequate, and there needs to be a better way to get people downtown where they don't have to drive. And I think that would be the most critical part of it, getting people from the west side into downtown. And maybe on Curtis, we've got a lot of sidewalk already built on Curtis, so it wouldn't be that much of a problem. But going over that bridge over the interstate on Curtis is a scary proposition in a car. I wouldn't want to ride it on a bicycle with all the trucks coming out of the truck stops right there and the entrance to it. So they talk about other ways to do it, and I think it will be doable. So I'm of two minds about it. I don't know, somebody else carry the ball for a while.
So I am prepared to make a motion related to this matter when the time comes. I do support it. I wanted to acknowledge and express appreciation for the comments today, but also I thought that the community engagement that was part of this, not just in terms of the numbers that were captured, which we see a lot of, but also the variety of ways that the public engagement was instituted. So I think that's very valuable because, and I guess the second point is just to reiterate the importance of having a plan, and that this is a menu of options, but what's important is it's looking at it kind of comprehensively, and it has given members of the community the chance to participate in that. As we were hearing about it, I just happened to read one of the articles about all the controversy over some of the wind projects kind of up through the center part of the state, and the complaints about there not being a comprehensive look or plan to look at the landscape and figure out what is appropriate where. And that's what this kind of document is. And it is just a menu of options to then choose which ones. I appreciate the prioritization, but choose which ones to seek funding for and think about implementing those choices come later. The one other thing I just did want to flag is I appreciated there was some information, it was in Appendix A, about costs. So I just wanted to flag that for the record, and I think it was important to have that, as well as the criteria that were used to evaluate and tier the different projects.
Well, I agree with you on one thing in particular. If we had this much community engagement on the stormwater issue, there would be a lot more peaceful city council meetings. So, and I think that was an excellent, that's the main reason I would have any support for this is you had an awful lot of people in the city who were interested in this.
I did want to offer one, there's just one amendment that needs to be made to the certification, because the date, it says the 12th day of December. So we need that to reflect the 12th day of January, that this is passed, approved, and adopted.
Anybody else? Donald?
So I support this. I think this is a good idea. as Sharon said, I think this is a menu. We're not committing to this in terms of saying all these should be done or we like the ranking or whatever. This is giving the city for the next 30, 40 years, long after I'm going to be between two planks, saying conceptually these where these areas could be. I want to say something about cycling in Laramie, because I used to cycle in Laramie, and I used to cycle from the east side where I lived, originally on Buford Street, and latterly on Holiday. I used to go across the old viaduct. Crossing the old viaduct was not a lot of fun. Periodically, as a cyclist, you would be shouted at by truck drivers, which is very scary because you're trying to stay as close to the road, to the margin of the road. You'd give yourself, I don't know, 4 or 5 inches. And with the Curtis Street bridge, that's an improvement. It's still scary as hell to go across that. And it just amazes me. We haven't seen more cyclists hurt or killed in Laramie. So there's a case to be made for trying to separate cyclists from motorists, because I don't know if it's Wyoming culture, but on certain days, there's not a lot of respect for cyclists. And if there's going to be an accident, the person who's going to get killed is the cyclist. So I think the emphasis on safe cycling, and my son is a cyclist and he never drives a car, I think is appropriate. And I think there are folks here in town who want to be able to ride their bike, especially in summer and especially on a day like today. And they are fearful of doing so. I'm fearful of doing so. And I have a very nice bike in my garage, but I have to think twice about cycling on any of the busy streets here. So I commend the idea of having more walkways and safe walkways and cycling paths. So I support this.
Well, to your point, I was recently, well, over Thanksgiving in Albuquerque. And as you drive around the streets of Albuquerque, I don't know if you're familiar with New Mexico, but there are lots of, wherever somebody died on a roadway, they put up a cross, and the family will continue to put up flowers and put up Santos and various things. And I was confused because I hadn't been there for 18 years. And there are white painted bicycles with flowers in baskets on them all over Albuquerque. And I asked my friend who we were staying with what those were, and he said, "Oh, that's where a bicyclist died." And there are way too many of them. And Albuquerque actually has bridges over some of the busier streets, which is the only reason I would support this, is because of that experience. But again, I'm concerned about cost effectiveness and just how much benefit it'll be to working people. So
I guess I'll make the last bit of comments. I'm not going to repeat anything that anyone else said already because I think both Donald and Sharon made some good points. But just to reiterate, I really value the diversity of approaches that are identified in here, the attention to both pedestrian traffic as well as cycling, because I think those are key to Laramie as it moves into the future, to have multimodal transportation, not just focusing on, vehicular traffic. So really appreciate that, this plan was developed and, that the consultants put such attention to it to identify the diversity of approaches. So that's it.
I'll chime in here too. As we heard in one public comment, we need industry, but I think that industry follows some sort of development of a town. Industry is not going to come in if there's not sort of the ability for the employees of that industry to sort of have a good life. So I think I support this plan just based on that.
anybody else? Sharon, you want to take it?
Yeah, and I think I should probably first move to amend the certification.
No, first
we don't need to.
move the plan and then.
Oh, and then we'll deal with the certification. Okay. Okay, so I move to recommend that the planning commission adopt the commission resolution, which would adopt the Reconnect West Laramie plan in its entirety, included as attachment A of the resolution, and then certify to the city council for final adoption. So that would be the motion, but it relates to the resolution.
Do we have a second on
I
them?
second.
Okay, now you can amend it.
Okay, so I would like to, I move to amend the resolution that we were given for consideration, resolution 2026-01 of the City of Laramie Planning Commission. And the only amendment that I offer is to change at the end for it to read passed, approved, and adopted the 12th day of January 2026, changing it from December.
Do we have a second on that?
A second.
Now, clerk, do we have to vote on the amendment first and then on the motion?
Correct.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the amendment. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. We don't need a roll call for that, do we? All right, so then we'll go to the motion, which has been seconded, the main motion. Do we need a roll call on that?
Or you can do a voice vote.
All right, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously. All right, next order of business. We have the 10-year public transportation plan. Who's got that one?
Good evening, Commissioners. If you've not seen me before, I'm Mary Bork. I am with the City Manager's Office, and I was hired as a project manager for this study now plan. Let's take a look here. I was hired after the RFQ came out, so that process had already been rolling. This study is a collaboration and now plan collaboration between the city and Albany County Transportation Authority. The City Council has had several transportation goals as part of their objectives over the last couple of years. I could see going back to 2023. This has been going on for a while. And I was hired to administer the grant and help with the study and work with the consultant on this. My first day was the kickoff day for this with Mead and Hunt. Our consultants who are online, that would be Haley Vaughn and Paul Silberman, who are here. Paul will be speaking. They are remote. So I've had a crash course in learning about Laramie. I had just moved here 4 months prior to that. And so I want to thank planning for their assistance because I've had a lot of questions. Same thing with the clerk's office, trying to learn the Laramie processes. This project was able also to align, thank you to DJNA before he leaves, Bill, to work out and have our public engagement process go on along with theirs. We started actually with the home show. I don't believe they were present, but we were able to attend a lot of the public engagement events, the pop-up events that happened in the summer. In addition to our outreach at these public events, we held meetings with stakeholders. We created an advisory board, and Joseph, who is on the planning staff, was also on that advisory board. And we had an online presence on the city's website as well as the county's. This plan has been presented before the Transportation Authority. They made some recommendations and it'll go back to them in hopefully February. And just as a reminder that, and I've got it outlined here for myself, that the purpose behind this plan is to identify gaps in public transportation services, provide strategies for filling those gaps in a non-duplicative manner. So we were looking to see what was already there. And then part of what we're looking for is to assess the financial sustainability, evaluate service options for low income and disadvantaged populations, provide positive impact towards the city's environmental and economic development objectives, and community planning goals related to low to moderate income housing, livability, and age friendliness. The other thing that I wanted you to all be aware of, since this plan has come out, last week I was reaching out to our stakeholders and folks we'd had one-on-ones with, and I had just learned that Laramie Connections is going to be shutting down. So when we provided this plan, we had looked at them as a provider for public transportation services, but they no longer, if you look at their website, it says that they are no longer providing those services. So it even speaks even more to the need for public transportation here in Laramie and Albany County in general, because that service is no longer going to be here. Moving forward, just to kind of let you know the process that's going forward, is that I have been in contact with Albany County Clerk's Office, and they're looking to take this plan to their Board of Commissioners so they can adopt it for the purposes of them securing any grant funds in the future. So besides here, and then the same thing's true with the university. I have reached out to them to see if they need this for anything that they were going to be doing in the future as well. You just happened to hit our timetable first. So following the Reconnect West, we again will be at the City Council for a workshop tomorrow, and then on the 20th on their agenda for adoption. And so we're here to just formally adopt here at the Planning Commission, and then move it on to the City Council for final adoption. And Ryan, when you want to, is Paul available now?
I'm here. Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, Paul. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Did you do the cost estimates and the writer estimates?
That's all with the consultant.
It's all what?
With the consultant, Paul, who will be giving our presentation.
All right, thank you.
Great. Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to present our plan to the Planning Commission. We really enjoyed working with all the city staff, Mary, all the stakeholders. Learned a lot about Laramie and Albany County, and we're really excited to hear your thoughts on this plan. So I understand about 20-ish minutes, and then we'll take questions and answers. Next slide. So what we'll cover tonight is the project overview, the public engagement that was conducted, the service concepts that we developed, and the service planning that came out of that to support implementation. Next slide. So again, the project overview, this was a FTA and Wyoming DOT funded and administered study. It looks out over 10 years, and it's a joint effort with the city and the county. And we want to identify, enhance, and recommend new public transit services. So we began in about April with some existing conditions. We conducted public outreach, public engagement in April through September, and we did concept development after that. And throughout the fall, we did concept refinement, and here we are in the end of the year, and right now wrapping it up with the plan adoption. So we'll dig into each of that a little bit more. Next slide. Talk briefly about existing conditions. Next slide. So currently there are several service providers in Laramie and Albany County, primarily the university's Roundup service, which runs a couple routes that you see there with blue dots for bus stops. And then there's Safe Ride, which is on demand, on call. There's Paratransit, Epson Center for Seniors, and as Mary mentioned, Laramie Connections, which was part of your mix of existing publicly accessible transportation services, is closing its doors. So there's a limited network today, and we wanted to look to the future and understand how we could grow that. Next slide. What we found in terms of transit gaps based on your limited network is that there wasn't any direct service to West Laramie. And I'm sure we've all heard a lot about that in the previous presentation. There are 6,000 residents, over 1,000 jobs and educational institutions. There's no fixed route service on the weekends. There's no north-south running service. There's no service to the Greyhound bus stop. There's no service to the airport. There's only 1 or 2 stops downtown. There's no evening service in the summer, and there's no service to the hospital. So it truly is a very limited public transportation system, and it's very focused on student and senior citizens. And Laramie has a lot more transit markets and potential riders that we wanted to uncover through the study and develop a robust plan for. Next slide. So like we said, some of the markets we uncovered throughout our public engagement process included, of course, the students that primarily ride the Roundup, Wyotech, Laramie County Community College, the summer tourists that come to visit the recreational areas and festivals, the winter tourists that use the winter recreation areas, visitors to the universities for their events, residents, and commuters from Laramie to Cheyenne and from Cheyenne to Laramie. All of these are potential transit markets that expressed interest in having the ability to use public transportation in addition to some of the ones I already mentioned, like, seniors. Next slide. So a little bit about our public engagement. Next slide. So beginning in April and up through November, we had a number of events that were open to the public, or we had an advisory committee made up of various working groups from the city and county that weighed in on our existing conditions and our service concepts and our recommendations. So we had over a dozen events at various festivals throughout town. Some of them were side by side with the folks from the Reconnecting Plan. So we got a lot of surveys filled out, a lot of comments on our maps about where people would like to go, where people would like to see the bus stop, and how much they would use it. So we did focus these, as you see. Some were more for partner agencies, like Laramie Connections, for example. Some were more for the business community. Some were more for seniors, older adults, and others were, at campus and at Jubilee Days and so on and so forth. So we really do think we talked to a very good cross section of those potential transit markets. Next slide. We sat down one-on-one and interviewed all of the agencies you see here, from ACTA to the university to Albany County, the tourism board, Main Street, the airport, even over to Cheyenne Transit, Cheyenne MPO. We wanted to understand their unique need and their interest in partnering with us on public transportation and how we could make that work for creating a regional transit network, public transportation network. Next slide. So we got great data from them. Some of the major themes that we heard from our stakeholders was accessibility and affordability. We really needed it to be available to those who are lower income or have disabilities, older adults, people without cars, and that was something we heard loud and clear. We also heard they wanted to be any bus service, they wanted it to be frequent, and they wanted it to get them to where they needed to go. They didn't want to have to use complicated maps or apps or anything like that to figure out where how to get the bus and where it's going to go. They wanted it to be simple, a fixed route, and they wanted it to be just show up and ride the bus without thinking about. Then the safety, they definitely had concerns about safety while waiting for the bus. They wanted to wait for the bus at well-lit stops. They wanted shelters, and they wanted to cross the street, safely to get to the bus stop. Those were all concerns we heard loud and clear. They largely wanted a fixed network. In other words, that the bus would come at certain times and go in certain streets, but they wanted to also have some flexibility in terms of more choices like on demand or smaller vehicles, which will show you how we work that in, sort of the way that Safe Ride is just in like a regular van, and some of the subscription carpool services that we'll talk about in a few minutes. Then we also heard about public awareness that, it came as a surprise to many members of the public and even some of the stakeholder groups that the Roundup service was open to anyone, that you didn't have to present a university ID card or be a student or faculty to be allowed to ride it. So public awareness of that public transit is really for everyone and open to the public. So that's more of an education piece. It doesn't really cost as much as buying a new bus and paying a driver and fuel. So that was something we heard loud and clear. And then, funding and investment. It's important. One of the lessons we learned from Gem City Grand is to have a sustainable funding source and to invest in keeping your buses and bus stop in good working condition. You're going to put, 100,000 miles on some of these buses a year with the routes they run and the frequency at which they run these routes. So, having good maintenance and getting maximum life out of these buses is really important. It's a big investment for the city and county. Next slide. So again, in terms of the outreach, I know it's really important that we got good representation and heard from everybody. So again, we had over 9 public events, 600 unique impressions, 546 written comments, and 77 inputs on our maps and posters that we brought to these events. So we really do think we heard from a lot of people, more than just the typical people that are already predisposed to being supportive of new transit services in town. Next slide. Just some high-level themes here. Airport, Wyotech, the University, West Laramie were some big themes we heard. We got a lot of responses, from people that lived right in town. Again, a third didn't know that the university Roundup service is open to everyone. 68% felt that the network's too limited. It's not even functional for them to get them where they need to go. And a vast majority said that they would really consider using it, that there's no stigma. It's something that would benefit them, in their day-to-day life and activities. Next slide. Service concepts. So again, we've documented the existing conditions, put a lot of attention and thought into reaching out to the public. Let's show you what we came up with. Next slide. So this is a 10-year plan, and we phased this intentionally to have a short-term plan, which is the first 3 years, a midterm plan, which is years 4 to 7, and then a long-term, which is years 7 to 10. Each of these horizons build on the previous one. So the short-term plan builds on what's out there right now. The midterm plan builds on the short term, and the long-term builds on the midterm. So we have 3 routes for the short term. The key features of these routes is we've made the hospital part of the express and not the link. We've moved the rec center stop to Garfield Street to help with traffic control at the intersection on Boulder. We added the West Laramie loop, and that routes along Ivinson to overlap with where the link touches. We've added on-street stops for Safeways and Ridley's, and the evening service with the additional stops is now just replaced with the continued evening service on the Link and Express, and we're running a little bit of a shorter headway. Next slide, I'll show you what that looks like on a map. So this would be our 1 to 3 year plan, and it would operate Mondays through Saturdays, 6:30 to 10:30, It would have 3 routes. 2 of them already exist, but they'll be modified, like we noted, the Lincoln Express, and then we'll be adding the West Laramie route. So this is your short-term, 1 to 3 years service plan rollout, and we'll show you a summary table of statistics next. I think I have that at the end. I'm sorry. Let me run through midterm and service plan. So what we'll do in the midterm is we'll maintain those daytime routes from the short-term service plan, which is the Link, the Express, and the West Laramie Loop. And we'll add 1 north-south 15th 9th Street loop route, and they'll operate throughout the service day. And what that looks like on a map, next slide, is that green. So again, that's the only thing we've added in years 4 through 7. You'll see the north-south route on 15th and 9th that will intersect with the Link and the Express, and that will create additional coverage and service in the midterm portion of this plan. Same operating pattern, Monday through Saturday, 6:30 to 10:30. Next slide. In the long term, 8 to 10 years, again, we'll maintain everything you saw in the midterm, and we'll add a hospital Safeway loop. And this loop will connect key destinations for health and groceries and other destinations, and it'll operate the same hours. Next slide. So the blue is the final overlay, and it's a little bit like a rectangle, but it will intersect with pretty much every route. So it really gives you fabulous connectivity. This is a very robust network that covers every major destination that we got input about, and I think it will meet all the objectives of this plan. And we'll show you some of the statistics on what this looks like in terms of hours and fleet on the next slide. So again, the Link and the Express, they run today. We're modifying them in terms of their hours of operations. They'll each run about a 10-mile and 7-mile loop. You can see the stops there, the travel times, the average frequency that they'll come, and the number of vehicles needed. So the Link needs 4, the Express needs 6, and then where you can transfer between the nodes. Again, these travel times are approximate. The number of stops, the bus will stop if someone's present. If it's not, it'll keep going. Then you add the West Laramie, that's 9 miles, 27 stops, about 45 minutes for the full loop. Coming every 30 minutes, you'll need 2 vehicles for that. Those will be 2 new vehicles. The 15th 9th would be 6 miles, 28 stops, about a 40-minute travel time, coming every 30 minutes. 4 new vehicles for that. 4 peak vehicles for that. 5 would be the total new vehicles. And then the hospital Safeway would be the final in the long term, would be about 8 miles, 31 stops, 45 minutes, running 30 minutes in the daytime, 60 minutes in the evening. Again, 4 peak vehicles, purchasing 5. So you can see the fleet size will get up to about 22 by the time the system is built out over 10 years. Next slide. We do have some regional connections that we heard about. That was the core network. The airport is a really important economic engine for the city and county. We are recommending an on-demand shuttle similar to Safe Ride or Laramie Connections that people can book in advance to get to their flight or to get from the airport to their destination. There are very good models for that are successful. That picture in the bottom right is actually up in Jackson from START Transit Agency. They do something very similar. We're recommending that most of these regional connections, we're recommending some kind of destination sponsored contribution to tie this into the core system. So reaching Happy Jack, Vedawoo, Snowy Range, we see this as resort sponsored or the park, the U.S. Forest Service, National Park, sponsoring transit to parks type shuttles. These are smaller vehicles, like you see in the top right. They would only run, Friday, Saturday, Sundays, just a couple trips out, couple trips back. Intercity service, we had a great conversation with Cheyenne Transit and the Cheyenne MPO. There's a lot of interest in something between Laramie and Cheyenne for commuters, a couple trips a day in each direction. We see this as something that could be a subscription-based service that people can sign up for, and they can have a van subsidized for carpooling. We've seen lots of models of this. We've cited some in our report. It can be funded by the employer, the state, or Cheyenne Transit, some kind of cost share. We think it's very viable. It can start to scale. If there's only 10 or 15 people that want to do it, well, that's just one van. Next slide. Cost and ridership, they're really important stuff. Next slide. So again, the route service metrics, you can see here the number of trips that each bus would complete along each route, the number of hours they'd be in revenue, and the total miles they do each day, revenue hours, and revenue miles. These are just some of the statistics that we would report out to WYDOT and the Federal Transit Administration. Just some notes here, things that we assume. These are obviously up for debate as this rolls out, but we wouldn't do service on current UW transit holidays, which are 14. We wouldn't do Sunday service. We would maintain evening service during the summer and school breaks, which is different from what's done now. And we would adjust the express to match the academic year service levels. So those annual numbers are adjusted. Next slide. So some of the cost here for vehicles, this is one of the biggest upfront costs that you need to make. So we looked at two different models. One is a high floor transit bus that you'd have a lift for ADA accessibilities. A 30-foot, which is more expensive, would have a low floor. So again, based on the 12 to 15 new fleet vehicles that we expect you'll need, the upfront cost is somewhere between 3.5 to 4.5 for the smaller vehicles and 4 to 5.5 million for the larger vehicles. This is a purchase price. If you wanted to lease them, or if you wanted to have a concessionaire, procure it and run it on behalf of the city or county, and we'll talk about that. These costs could come down. There's a lot of supply chain issues right now with transit vehicles. It's not just like a electric vehicle thing. It's just Buy America and just clauses and just a lot of supply chain issues in getting these buses out to market. So we do caution that whether you lease or buy, we want to build in sufficient lead time. Next slide. So the operating cost, how much will it cost to run this? So we looked at what you reported to the Federal Transit Administration's National Transit Database in fiscal year 24. We adjusted that for 26. We used about $87 per revenue hour. This is based on a lot of peer agency reviews. That includes $35 in revenue hours to cover your administrative and facilities cost. When you have a fleet of 15 to 20 vehicles, you're going to need some type of dispatch location, some type of garage or maintenance facility that you don't have right now It's bigger than what the university is running. There may be a concessionaire fee baked in there per hour if you put that out to a concessionaire to operate on your behalf. So we included that in the $87. We also noted out that the evening service, in case you wanted to shorten the evening service, you just to bring costs down. If you didn't want to run it till 10:30 at night, we are just showing you that that amount per hour of the evening service. You could back that down, but you're looking per route on average of 1 to 1.5 million in annual operating costs, and that's really to run and maintain the buses and pay for the drivers and the fuel. That's basically what it boils down to. So next slide. So what do you get for all of that? How many people are really going to use that? So we did some ridership methodology. We looked at the number of people that would use transit, pivoting off of the Gem City Grand and some of your land use and demographics and some peer agencies and literature and research review and some of our models. And, you know, basically, if you, the green bar is what's out there today, or what was out there when the Gem City Grand was running. So you're looking at about 1,500. If the Gem City were still running at about 1,500 riders per day. If you built out this system, you'd be close to 3,000 riders per day, and you know, that would get you a really good annual ridership of about 750,000 transit riders per year, which is really robust. That's definitely on par with some of the larger rural systems in the Mountain West. We just think there's great propensity for people using transit with your unique characteristics and the university and your compact grid network and stuff. Next slide. So how are you going to operate, fund, and manage this, right? It looks good statistically. The routes make sense. We went through many iterations of the routes with great working group, university, ACTA, city staff. Next slide. So, you know, we see this as a flexible integrated network. So you have your core fixed route services, right? Those are the ones that have the stops, and they stay on the same streets, and they come at the regular frequency, and they can have weekend and evening hours. Then you have some subscription services. This could be commuting to Cheyenne, or signing up for some of the resort and recreational area. You have to book these trips in advance. It could also serve some local trips with seniors or people with disabilities. And then you have your, so those have specific destinations, or, you know, they pull people together that may be commuting to Cheyenne. And then you have your on-demand microtransit, right? And so you have some existing providers, Safe Ride, Epson Center 211. Now Laramie Connections is folding, as Mary mentioned. We're proposing to add Laramie Airport to this, but we're not proposing to sunset any of these services, right? This is all part of a flexible, integrated network to get you everywhere in the area that you need to go. Next slide. We are suggesting that you do charge a fare because, you know, a flat fare of $1 to $2 per day, continuing make it free for students, maybe reduce fares for seniors, youth, or income. It can contribute up to 20% of your operating cost. We think that people will pay for this. You could do some fare-free pilots to recreation or seasonal routes, but you know, we think that paying for service, you know, there's a value to this service. You know, we don't think that it should be subsidized. It's only going to get more expensive. We think you should start with a flat fare And that's what some of our best practice. There's a lot of technology. There's a lot of payment mediums or coupon books. We do recommend a flat fare strategy, not doing anything complicated like zones, but we do think this service should not be free. Next slide. And then again, your fleet, you're not buying 15 buses like the minute you adopt this plan. You're gonna buy 2 vehicles in phase 1, 5 vehicles in phase 2. I should say phase 3, 5 vehicles in phase 3. You can consider leasing. You would need less lead time to lease it, $10,000 to $15,000 per bus annually. That could show well on pilot routes. It's much more expensive to buy a bus. It could take up to 24 months, depending on the back order and the vendor, and the size of the bus that you want. We do see first last mile connections, mobility hubs, bike racks, sidewalks, maybe even some scooters or electric bikes. Really, part of integrating this, even ski racks on the buses for some of those recreational areas. You will also need a dedicated maintenance facility to support this fleet, because it's going to really outgrow the university's resources. Next slide. And lastly, our phased governance. We looked at a lot of different models for how to administer this. This is what we are recommending at this point, and it's certainly up to all of these agencies to vet this. But right now, we would say that in phase 1, so 1 to 3 years, UW continues to operate the Link, Express, and Safe Ride. They keep their infrastructure, their staff, their fleet, and they really focus on that. In phase 2, you should look at a regional transit authority. That can be a partnership with the city, the county, the state, the university, looking at legal pathways and models to create that, to stand that up, and intergovernmental agreements and service district compacts. And then by phase 3, you would have, again, this is 7 years out, you had an independent public entity. It would represent a representative governing board. It would oversee the planning, funding, and operations, and ensure accountability and transparency. I mean, again, this is a system that will bring in some revenue, but you're talking a total fleet of almost 20 buses and annual operating costs, in the $7 to $10 million range. So this is a sizable transit system. Next slide. Paying for it. So we do recommend a multi-pronged approach to funding this. Again, some of the regional connections can be employer contributions, public-private partnerships. We recommend looking at some of the active mill levy property taxes, some of the city sales taxes, and then pursuing more grants. There's formula and grant funding out there that can support different elements of this, whether it's installing bus stops or ADA or purchasing fleet. There is money out there for it. Even in the current political climate, there's definitely money available for rural transit. Just need to know what funding pools to submit against. Next slide. So I think that's it. I know that was a ton of information. I wanted to limit it to respect our time. So we're happy to open it up for questions about anything you've heard.
Anybody want to start? Okay, I'll start. All right. I'm not a lawyer, but correct me if I'm wrong. Under state of Wyoming statute, if you set up a public authority, such as a sewer system, a sewer treatment plant, etc., it has to be self-sustaining. All right. Currently, the city of San Francisco charges $5.75 for a bus ride. The city of New York, depending on what the mayor ends up getting away with charges $3 for a bus ride. Cheyenne charges $2 for a bus ride. All of those bus systems are much larger than the ones we have and serve a lot more people, so they can do it. Assuming with the numbers you have, uh, in the 10-year build out of 750,000 riders per year and an operating budget of for all practical purposes, $7.5 million. This thing ain't going to fly. It can't pay for itself unless you charge $10 a ride. All right. You can get all the dreams you want of getting mill levy money. They're not going to fly. Hell, we can't even get enough mill levy to pay for city and county services right now because of the political climate. And whether you like it or not, you're not going to be able to get another penny out of the sales tax. I mean, unless we give up something else. I mean, the 6 penny tax, unless we can go with get the political will to get a 7 penny tax. I just don't see. Now, if you were going to build a bus line that goes like in your phase one plan to service West Side, get from the West Side up to Walmart and the high school, I think you could fly that. You could get that to fly. But to build this extensive bus system, we just haven't got the money. I don't see how it's gonna work unless anybody's got any other ideas.
Well, let me answer your question. I mean, yes, there might need to be some changes to statutes to create an authority that is not self-sustaining, and that's why we're saying phase 3, right? 7 years out, because these things don't change overnight. We were never proposing that this plan would be self-sustaining. I mean, transit is a public good. Even all those systems you mentioned, even New York, Chicago, San Francisco, Cheyenne, Denver, I mean, they're all subsidized. Everything's subsidized in transportation, roads, airports. So we were recognizing that there would have to be some sustained funding sources cobbled together. There's no one source that's going to come up with the 5 million, 7 million, or whatever, but charging a fare would be one of those sources, and other grants, other public-private partnerships, concessionaire fee, advertising. There's a lot of funding strategies that these rural transit systems use to have a go at providing the public good that is a public transportation system. So I definitely don't want to misstate that we expect this plan to be self-sustaining or self-funding. It would take a lot of work to raise the money to operate it or even to purchase the vehicles. And that's why we phased it out. So there's time to pursue those funding streams and make a decision to invest in public transit for the region.
Thank you. Anybody else?
One thing I'm curious about during your public process is if you talk to people who are currently not using public transportation but expressed a genuine interest if those routes that you described became available, particularly if like the time frames as well that you identified, because I'm curious about kind of that unmet need at the current time, and the interest of people who don't tap into that right now, that they may convert to using it if it were indeed made available.
Well, I mean, absolutely. It's something we heard a lot from different transit markets that, number one, they didn't know that they could use the roundup routes that are out there today. And then number two, they said, well, absolutely. If I'm coming to a football game, I would ride the bus. I don't want to drive. I don't want to park, or I would rather take a bus to go to the grocery store, to go across town for work, or to go to Wyotech. I mean, we took people at their word, but we, in those stated preference questions, but we also did, good analytical estimates based on very conservative, ridership projections and models that are based on not what people say, but what people do based on demographics and land use and the availability of transit service. So there really is it really is conservative. The ridership could be higher than that. It takes time to build a brand. I mean, think of it this way: Gem City stopped rolling in almost a decade ago, right? The university has been running Roundup for years and years and years, and nobody knows that it's not for students. If you all decide to implement the West Laramie route in phase one and rebrand the Lincoln Express, it takes time to build that brand and get that ridership following. It doesn't happen, the minute you start the engine. So that's all part of it too. Building the brand will drive up ridership to to a level where people don't need to think about it. Even is it an even choice between driving or some other mode or biking, that it's on equal footing, and they know the bus is coming, and it's just something that they use to get around. That's what we've seen in these other pure rural case studies that we've done.
Just one quick follow-up question for clarification. When you say transit markets, those are like University of Wyoming students, WyoTech people. What could you just list a few of those just so I understand specifically who those are?
Yeah, so transit market is basically a segment of a population that is potentially more inclined to use transit for different reasons, right? So like senior citizens, because it's hard for them to drive. They may not have a car anymore. Disabled people, students who don't have a car. So those are some of the core transit markets, and there's others like commuters or airport passengers or people that are coming in for a special event. So we looked at all those different profiles to see how they would benefit from the transit services we came up with.
And you just looked how they would benefit. You didn't actually pull all of those transit markets and get data for each of them, some robust data set that you're determining these findings based on.
I mean, we did it. We did ask demographic questions in our survey in the responses that we got, and we did go to targeted outreach events to reach those people, the senior citizens, older adults. So we do feel they were represented in our public outreach. And we did talk to the stakeholders that run the Epson Center and Laramie Connections and so on and so forth, and the airport. So we do feel we've heard from those specific transit markets and have made sure that our routes and service models accommodate them.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Chris?
So Paul, is another transit market is people that have cars and are very accustomed to using them, that they will then forego the use of the convenience of their car and scheduling and so forth to use transit. Is that a big part of the increased ridership or the population?
So potentially transit riders can come from people that have more choices, right? They have their own car and they can afford to drive it and go where they need to go. And our modeling was very conservative in estimating that those people would, sell their cars or not use them or something like that. But yes, I mean, when there's a robust network with lots of connections and, frequent service, reliable service, that the bus shows up when it's going to show up, gets you where you need to go, that people do not use their cars or have fewer cars. We're not anti-auto. We're not trying to get rid of every car in Laramie. We're not trying to give a car-free city. We just want to give choices, and owning a car can be expensive. Buying a car, a used car, can be really expensive, and insuring it and all of that stuff. And we want to give that part of this plan was to give people those choices. So we do think you can attract some riders for some trips that, you know, have a car and use it every day.
Just just a comment of my opinion. It makes my head swim to look at this comprehensive network and the costs and the commitment to it in this community that I lived in for 38 years. I mean, to commit to that intensive network and waiting for it to happen is it is pretty rough in my mind. I'm more supportive of something that's really pointed in the short term towards populations that really will use this service. And to me, it's the low income, disadvantaged people that don't have cars and need to get to really important places. And so just like looking at that 1 to 3 year route, West Laramie, something like a couple park and ride spots, and you take them quick to the along I-80 and get them to Walmart, and they're hooked up to the link system and they can move up and down Grand Street. Okay, that's a real simple way to deal with West Laramie, perhaps. But more importantly for me is that, you know, the disadvantaged community that doesn't have money that would use a free service is 9th Street and 3rd Street. So you got the Civic Center, you got the library, you got Interfaith, you got Feeding Laramie, you got Hitting Reynolds, going to Goodwill, making the left on 3rd and going to Epson Center, going down to the Soup Kitchen, going to and getting into the guts of downtown, making a left and going back up 9th Street. That community of people that need those services and that don't have transportation, and maybe it would head off to Petro to pick up the Greyhound once a day. That is, to me, a much more core need in Laramie, and just a 9th Street, 3rd Street loop with some maybe minor deviations, and getting West Laramie, as Tom said, to Walmart, and see how that works. See what the ridership actually is, and a cooperative relationship with UW of working that express and that link thing and getting good statistics and doing PR extensively for a couple years to get the community hooked into that this thing is available for free, and see how the ridership expands with good PR and community, and a much more do these very immediate things, and then just use this document and this, you know, build out plan as really just something, as Tom said on the Reconnect, it's a wish list. It's something we got on paper. You can look at it and it's a lot easier to edit than it is to create, kind of thing. But
Well,
really focus on
don't-
that immediate need.
I don't disagree with anything you've said, right? Our task at hand, our scope was to create a strategic vision, you know, for 10 years for a robust system that had stakeholder consensus among the stakeholders that we work with. We are by no means suggesting that it's a, you know, a black or white adoption of this whole cloth. We welcome comments. The Planning Commission can choose to cherry pick it, just adopt phase one, and some of the, you know, on-demand microtransit services, leave out options. There is sticker shock. We hear you. We understand that, but these are the real costs of, you know, running a robust transit system, and we you know, we didn't want to misrepresent that. So we welcome critique, and if you feel like, you know, you adopt it with caveats, we certainly understand.
Thank you. And I'm not saying, that this doesn't have value. It's great to have this comprehensive, if you build it, it will come sort of, document, in the work. So I'm in support of it.
My only caution in terms of the way we built up the operating costs and capital costs, everybody wants door-to-door service, right? I mean, who wouldn't? It's super convenient, but it's much more expensive to provide door-to-door service for every transit trip. You might get some grant money up front, or you might get a sponsor or something, but ultimately those costs creep up and you can't bring them down. Fixed route service, the old school public bus that has fixed stops and fixed streets, and yeah, you might have to walk a couple blocks to get there, or you might have to bike a little bit. I mean, that is how you control the costs. So just know that we put a menu of integrated transit service types, but if you want to stop at phase one, or you want phase one plus the north 15th, 9th, like, I would be cautious about sprinkling a lot of on-demand service on top of that, because that's the most expensive. Even though it's wildly popular, people love it. It will have high ridership, but it's very high cost.
Well, I don't mind that because you've got a bus stop right in front of my house, so it's fine by me. Donald?
This is going to sound like a really stupid question. Was your charge to come up with a 10-year plan for a comprehensive public transportation system in Laramie? Was that your charge?
Correct.
Okay, because that's what we got. And I think this is a very good plan, very ambitious. I think it's smartly thought out. I like the idea of starting out with doing an east-west and then doing a north-south, and then having the service from Safeway to the hospital, I think. It's just, there's certainly sticker shock. One of the things you mentioned was of using a property tax to help support this. Maybe you should have a discussion with some of our legislators on that, because I recently went up to a county commission meeting in a very conservative part of the state, Goshen County, and with 3 very conservative commissioners. And even they are terrified at the cuts in property tax that are coming down the line. So you've given us what the city has asked for, but the concern is, in a culture that truly loves its cars, where people express what class they belong to, even what subset of the class they belong to, in the kind of vehicle they drive, it's very hard, even with a tin opener, to get Americans, especially Wyomingites, out of their goddamn cars. And so this, I support this notion. I think this should go forward to the city council, and then it's their baby, and they can tease out some of the good ideas you have put before us, so that they can decide, okay, we need to slim this down, way down. That's their problem. But I think we should at least consider public transportation here. I looked up what proportion of people in Fort Collins, a much larger town, what proportion of them use Transport, their public transportation system. It's very well organized, and they have a light rail system and so on. It's 2 to 4%. So that's a community that has the option of using it, and clearly they're not using it. If you've driven down College in Fort Collins recently at 4:30 on a Friday afternoon, they're clearly not using it. And my concern is we could put this in place here, but if we do it, we need to be cautious, and I hate to use the word conservative, but we need to be conservative in putting that in place.
Anybody else?
I'll go. I got a couple questions for you. Talking about the give or take 7 million for that, does that cost include a maintenance facility? and staff to maintain it and all of the operations to maintain the buses and the infrastructure?
Part of that includes part of the hourly cost includes the maintenance facility, either the purchase or lease of it. We didn't line item that because we didn't really know the construct. Is it something that there's a facility that already exists within the city or county or university that can be expanded? I mean, but yes, the maintenance facility and maintenance staff is baked in to that hourly operating cost.
I see. I guess, and then the next question, and maybe my last one here is, it's a really good put together plan and gives a lot of information, but I'm wondering if there was any thought to put a metric on it to wonder or to evaluate if it was successful or not, at the end of 2 years or 5 years or 10 years. And then if it really wasn't successful and it's not, worth the squeeze, as it said, how do we shut it down and walk away from it if we have all the infrastructure put together? Because like Donald was saying, most people here like their cars, and it's interesting that he referenced the 2%. If you take the number of respondents based on the population, that's about 1.5% of respondents based on the total population. And so my question, I guess, is there a way, or what would be the recommended way to evaluating it to see if it's successful or not? And when does one walk away from it if it isn't successful?
So we do have some performance measures in the report. We have a bunch of them, that we suggest. Obviously, ridership being one of them. People that have just access to transit and can get to various jobs or destinations where maybe before they couldn't, if they didn't have a car, or couldn't afford a car, or were disabled or elderly or medical appointments. So we have some of those metrics in there. I mean, just like you dissolve Gem City Grand, I mean, you could always, sell the fleet and, walk away from the bus stops. This whole project was envisioned because there's a belief in, some city leaders that, especially in college towns and, with all the amazing recreational and resort amenities in close proximity that you got, that the transit is vital to the growth and economic underpinning and health of the greater community. I mean, that it's a value that someone holds. Certainly, yeah, you can look at 2 to 4% and say, that's pittance. That's not worth the cost. I mean, we're not forcing anyone to give up their cars, get out. We're not shutting streets down to vehicle access or anything like that. But there's a cornerstone public good, value in providing this service to the broader community. Maybe it's a more narrow segment than is envisioned, but that is the genesis behind it.
Okay, thank you. And I guess one last comment. I would say that, I think there should be a fee associated with it because free things don't have value. Try to give something away free on Facebook, you can't. You put a dollar value to it and it suddenly disappears. So.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Well, we've been here for a little more than 2 hours. If the public doesn't mind, before we go to public comments, can we take a 5-minute break? Or should we adjourn or just say see you in 5 minutes? All right, thank you. We'll be back it's 6:37. We'll be back at 6:42. Let's call this meeting back to order since everybody's back. And does anybody else on the commission wish to comment on this? All right, we'll open it up to the public. Does anybody wish to speak on this? Welcome, we know who you are.
Thank you. I'll try to keep this short. I just have a couple of quick stories for you. On Saturday this week, when it was so cold and the wind chill was -1, I was driving past Safeway. There was an elderly gentleman with a walker who obviously had been shopping and was walking down the street. I pulled in to blow a door and offered him a ride and gave him a ride home. I said to him, "Do you ever use the service that the Epson Center has?" And he said, "I hate to bother them and give them a call." He was 80 years old. Every time I go to the airport and come back from a trip, I end up giving somebody, at least 8 out of 10 times, somebody a ride from the airport into town. It's generally people that are traveling to Laramie that just simply didn't realize that they had to plan ahead because we didn't have any kind of transportation service. Young, old, wealthy, not so wealthy, somebody always. The third thing is my partner, Jim, lived in Europe for 27 years, so he swears by mass transport and uses it all the time. His mother is 97, lives in Ogden, Utah. He takes the Greyhound bus to Ogden, gets on the train from their main center from Salt Lake City to get to Ogden, takes a bus then from there to about 3 blocks from his mom's house and walks the rest of the way. He does that coming home as well. The link in the system that he can't get over is getting from the Greyhound bus station way out at the Petro to our house over on south of Spring Creek. So there is a need. I have a son who lives in West Laramie. He's one of those individuals that makes $50,000 to $70,000 a year. He would love to be able to have an option for getting around town. I agree this is a grandiose plan, and I'm not sure we can convince everybody to let go of their vehicles. I personally use the university system all the time whenever I go to anything on campus because I hate to try to find parking there. So it's a selfish reason, but it is really convenient. And I hope that you'll consider at least pushing this forward so that, as you mentioned, City Council can figure out what bits and pieces they might be able to implement. Thank you for your time.
Anyone else?
Good evening, Commission. I'm Nancy Sindlar. I'm a citizen of Laramie, a resident. I'm one of those that sings the praises of the bus. I love the bus, especially now they got bike racks on them. I go up to the hospital, I take the bus. Sometime now, this last time I had to be other places afterwards, so I put my bike on the bus. It works. I would hope you would reconnect with West Laramie Transportation. Okay, I was looking at some federal numbers. 30% of the people in the United States do not have a driver's license. Yeah, that's pretty amazing. I think it's higher in Laramie because we have a lot of students, foreign students especially. Every bike they've got to rent out, those get rented by the students every semester. That's a third of us don't drive. Adjudicated, old, too young, disabled, differently abled, can't afford a car, or like me, I prefer to leave the car at home. I used to sing the praises of the hospital parking garage. It's still a good parking garage, but I can take the bus and it's easier. Okay, and please consider connecting the West Laramie route and changing these are things that I see. There is not a bus stop at the hospital. Yeah, so you have to either walk from ECEC or from Spanish Walk, and which is a little gnarly in the wintertime. And especially when you wear sandals like I do and it's snowy out, which is should have put on shoes. The cost of owning and operating a car is $10,000 to $14,000 a year. People move to West Laramie because the rent's cheaper, and $14,000 a year, that's a lot of rent that you have to pay. Because you have to have the car if you live in West Laramie. Please, at least that part of I'd love to see the whole thing. I won't live long enough, but I'd love to see the whole thing going, but at least please reconnect the West Laramie with some kind of transportation. Uh, we need it. We need it. Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman, Madam Moore, members of the commission. I've been listening to my name is Brett Glass, and well, I've been listening to the to this complex and very ambitious plan, and I'm suggesting that if you forward it to council, you make it clear that this is aspirational, because this is a grandiose plan, and in real life, I don't think it actually is practical for a town of our size. I think we need to focus, as the previous speaker said, on the people who really are in need of something, rather than going for the biggest and most robust plan. This plan, I don't think, places enough emphasis on those with either with disabilities or who are economically disadvantaged. I'm concerned that it picks winners and losers, because it stops at some businesses, and mostly large out-of-town businesses and not local ones, and which will encourage people to patronize those instead of the local ones. I'm concerned that it's too UW centric, because it actually stops when UW stops. And well, if it's supposed to serve the whole community, that shouldn't happen. There are going to be people who are in real need who don't get off when UW happens to have a break. And well, the other question I have is the final slide of this presentation. It talked about who pays, and it talked about getting grants magically from from governmental sources and also from taxes. I'm not sure if the people who put together this plan understand how limited our authority is to raise taxes, that our extra penny taxes of sales tax have to be used only for capital, not for recurring expenses, or how resistant people would be to a seventh penny tax, or, as was mentioned earlier by one of your commission members, how it's very likely that property taxes are going to be cut. So I would recommend that you present this to council as being pie in the sky, great idea, but emphasize that what we should implement here, just because it's practical, is the services which are necessary for those of us who don't drive, who can't drive, who have real disabilities, who really need this, as opposed to just being a convenience. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anybody online? Well, just I've got one comment before we turn it over to the rest of it. I grew up with a mass transit system. At 10 or 12 years old, I could leave the house with a quarter. Well, my mom, I'd steal another couple of quarters from my mom so I could get a soda. But I could get on a subway train for 10 cents, go to Yankee Stadium, and watch a football game in the bleachers for 50 cents. And if I managed to steal enough quarters, I could get a soda pop. And for 10 cents, I could get from where I lived to anywhere in New York, Coney Island, anywhere except Staten Island, which really shouldn't be part of New York anyway. But it's a necessary item. I just don't think that Laramie is of the size and has the wherewithal to afford it. I do, however, really believe that we need a bus system to the west side. And we need to figure out how to do that and make it affordable. I do not like the idea of university students riding for free, but that's going to have to happen, because that's the only way you're going to get the university to buy in on it. And they're not going to raise student fees because these associated students probably don't want to raise enough fees or raise fees enough to pay for a transport system, which I think also would be unfair to those 12-year-old kids in middle school and kids in high school who have to pay full fare. So I think there's just too many problems with the complete build out. Now, if we could get something to the west side, I would be in support of that. But that's all I've got to say. Anybody else want to also we have to change the date on this one, on this resolution too. It's got the wrong date on it. Anybody else? I'll open it up. Donald?
I don't think we need to change the resolution because Matt is here representing the city. So I think he can convey the conversation that we had in terms of, I think there's a consensus that this is very ambitious and probably not doable. But at the same time, if it's affordable and if the University of Wyoming wants to be nice to the city for once, it would be useful if this could be extended to the west side of Laramie. But probably the university will want some money to do that. I'm sure they're going to ask the city to chip in, assuming they would even consider that.
Any further discussion, council? No, chair will entertain a motion.
Okay, so I will move because I do think we should at least forward it as a resource because money was paid to deliver this. And it doesn't reflect our view on whether it's a good policy choice or not. But I am going to move to recommend that the Planning Commission adopt Planning Commission Resolution 2026-02, which would adopt the 10-year public transportation plan in its entirety, included as attachment A of the resolution, and certify it to the city council for final adoption.
Is there a second?
I second.
Somebody want to make an amendment on the date? Sharon, you want to do that?
Yes, I would like. I move to amend the draft resolution to reflect at the end that it is passed, approved, and adopted on this 12th day of January 2026 rather than December.
Do I hear a second for that motion?
Second.
All right, all those in favor of amending the date, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. What the heck? I don't know what that was. I'll speak louder. We have a motion on the floor. All those for the resolution, all those in favor say aye.
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 Reluctantly aye. So we'll forward it out to city council and let them find it out. We now will entertain a motion to adjourn and reconvene as Board of Adjustment.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are now sitting as a Board of Adjustment. Let's go to work. Emma, take it away.
Good evening, Board of Adjustment. Tonight, we are reviewing a variance request from V&N Enterprises for the construction of around a 3,890 square foot and around 22-foot high construction industry storage building located at 460 West Garfield Street within the B2 zoning district. The request includes relief from facade articulation requirements, roof articulation standards, fence articulation, and sidewalk installation along one of 3 street frontages, all of which are typically required for new commercial development. Earlier this year, the applicant submitted a conditional use permit as the construction industry use is conditional in B2 and is the current use of the site and is what the new building would fall under as well. During staff review, we identified that the building design and public improvements did not meet several adopted code standards. The applicant is choosing to pause the CUP to submit the variance request first. If the variance is approved, the CUP would come before Planning Commission after review with the new standards. If the variance is denied, the CUP could still proceed but must meet those design and sidewalk standards. So our current city code states that a variance is intended to provide limited relief from the requirements of this code in those cases where strict application of a particular requirement will create a practical difficulty or unnecessary hardship prohibiting the use of land in a manner otherwise allowed under this code. It also states that it is not intended that this variance be granted merely to remove inconveniences or financial burdens that the code may impose, but it is intended to provide relief where there are unique physical attributes or other factor unique to the property which a variance is requested. And before we move into findings, one central point raised by the applicant that I wanted to make sure and discuss was the accessory building status. The applicant states that the building should be considered accessory. Staff wanted to definitely review this claim to give it full weight and found that the structure does not meet the accessory building criteria as broken out in the staff report. In addition, while the code slightly reduces design requirements for residential accessory buildings, there is no equivalent provision for commercial accessory structures because commercial accessory structures are not recognized separately. Basically, they're either part of that commercial use or they are not. Therefore, this site is being treated as a regular commercial development. I'll now walk through the variance findings. And starting with finding A for special circumstances unique to the property, staff finds that this standard is not met. The parcel is flat, regularly shaped, and meets all minimum dimensional standards. For the sidewalk relief request, while it is a smaller lot with 3 street frontages, the lengths of those frontages are proportionally smaller and when broken out is proportionally similar to other West Laramie commercial sites and the sidewalk lengths that would have been required if they were to be developed today without any sidewalk. Parcels with multiple street frontages are common in this neighborhood and do not create a hardship. For finding B, strict application depriving owner of reasonable use, we find that this is not met, as it is currently in use today and a code-compliant building could be constructed, meaning that reasonable use is available without a variance. For finding C, alternative energy access, that's not applicable in this request. For finding D, the minimum variance necessary, we find not met. The request involves relief from 4 independent design standards. A building can be developed here without a variance. For finding E, in harmony with the purpose and intent of code, we find that design articulation standards and sidewalk requirements implement adopted goals for community character, pedestrian connectivity, and consistent development quality. Granting broad relief without a hardship weakens application of the code and future design expectations at other sites in this area. And then for finding F regarding not altering neighborhood character or impairing adjacent property, it will not impair adjacent property. However, for the neighborhood character, while there are nearby industrial buildings, many are non-conforming and do not represent the future long-term pedestrian scaled pattern for the corridor. An unarticulated metal building with uninterrupted fencing would shift the visual away from the adopted future vision. Staff acknowledges that this is a site that needs improvement. However, the scope of the variance is only whether the required variance meets the findings where hardship prevents reasonable use. The city has a responsibility to apply standards consistently so improvements align with the community's adopted vision. Staff has received 1 call in support of the variance and 3 general inquiries. Public Works has stated that they do not support the sidewalk variance. Because staff does not find that the required findings have been met, we recommend denial of the variances to LMC 1514-090D2, D5, 1514-100.C, and 1518-010, as outlined in the staff report. If the Board of Adjustment would like to approve one or all of the variances, they must find for each finding that they have been met for each variance. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I do also want to note that the owner and applicant have been present and to provide information as well. Thank you so much.
Anybody want to start? Okay.
I'm not sure I'm allowed to ask this question, but is this part of the Vasquez operation? I think it's Vasquez that's on the other end of the property.
Chair, through you, that is correct, for B&N Enterprises.
Okay, got it.
All right, I know we've talked about this. I think this is not a matter of hardship. I think this is 1514.090.D. I think it's restrictive. It's entirely too restrictive an ordinance. I think it's in direct opposition to all the various plans, Thrive, Laramie, Comprehensive Plan, that all encourage economic development. This is a B2 zone, a business zone. And I think that business, is entitled to have a variety of construction options available. Metal buildings, I think, last I checked, there are about 8 million of them in the United States. It is the cheapest, fastest, and most common way to enclose space, free span in the country. By requiring facade changes and siding changes, you obviate the entire class of metal buildings. I think it's in violation of the comprehensive plan, and it's a detriment to economic development in the city of Laramie. And I would like to see if we can get the facade changes removed. I'm not going to argue about the sidewalks. There's too much against me on the code. The fence code is ambiguous at best. What is the purpose of a chain link fence that's existing and has existed for a long time? It's to keep people from going onto the property and stealing stuff. All right. And I don't see why that should be changed and why he has to do something with the fence. I'd like to approve the variance for facade changes and the fence. And that's my opinion of it. I think it's not a matter of hardship. I think it's a matter of, I know whenever you change anything on a grandfather, you're going to have to bring it up to modern code, but I think our code is too antiquated and too restrictive as far as commercial property goes. And I think it's a detriment to economic development. Thank you.
Chair, through you, just laying out the procedural options. Again, for the variance, the findings do have to be met legally. For changing the code, that would be done through a text amendment, which anyone is welcome to bring forward.
Anybody else?
I agree with you, for what it's worth.
Donald?
Well, at the risk of annoying the chair of the planning commission,
Oh, go ahead. I'm listening.
I used to cycle by this area, and I've always thought that it's Vasquez, right? They have done such a nice job on the other end of that property, and I've always admired the work that you guys did to make it physically attractive. And so I was torn when I saw this, because basically you want to put a large carbuncle on the other end of the property. And I think I was driving down 9th Street, So what's that accessory building? What is not accessory building? What is that building that serves the school district for other purposes? You know the building I'm talking about?
We're on 9th.
It's on South 9th, south of the old high school. And I was just struck, I was driving by it today and I was just struck. You know, back in the day, when we were building buildings in the city, we managed to do it without building metal boxes. And one of the things that I notice is that a lot of the stuff that goes in, including Walmart, are staggeringly ugly buildings. And I think putting a large metal box, although it may be convenient for the owners to do this, is a disservice to the West Side, and I would hate to see it go in, and also would be in violation of the existing code.
Chris?
I think what's presented in the staff report is solid and is kind of what we're actually forced to consider. So,
Sharon, anybody else?
I agree with Chris. I mean, we have a limited decision right now, which is whether an exception to the code is justified given the criteria. And I feel like the staff report is well supported, and I would deny the variance for that reason.
Anyone else?
Chair, through you, before you go to a vote, I just want to
No,
make.
we're not going to vote. We're going to
Okay.
go to citizen comments, and
And-
the applicant has to speak
Perfect.
next. Anybody else? Would the applicant care to speak?
Good evening, folks, and thank you for being here for me tonight.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Before you speak, since we're the Board of Adjustment, you have to be sworn in.
Oh,
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
How about you, Brett?
I do.
Brett, do you want to talk?
Yes.
Do you? All right. All right, go ahead. Sorry.
Johnny Vasquez, thank you guys for being here tonight. So yes, I am the owner of V&N Enterprise and the owner of J. Vasquez Construction. And I appreciate, like you said, what you've seen that I have done with the West Side as far as just not that property, but I continue to do it, and I'm doing it with 2 other properties right now. And so a lot of times it's really about, I'm trying to probably establish that I need to have time sometimes. So like the concrete thing, it's not about doing it. I'd love to do it. It's that when you're trying to do a project like this, you've got to think sensibly, one, and you've got to also think the greenery for all of us. And so I've thought about this a lot, as you say, putting up a metal box. That's not my intentions at all. My intentions are to have something that looks really nicer as in comparison as to what I've got right now, which is just a bunch of stuff in the yard and cars and stuff. Hoping to help my neighbors not have to look at it, the people down across the street at the doggy park. I'm surrounded by this kind of stuff already on the other side of the road from me, and that's not going to ever change. And there's even more happening over there now. So my thing is I just thought, well, what's my best use? Well, right now, because of the construction company, and I will tell you, V&N is the owner of the properties. I rent to J. Vasquez Construction. And so my thing is that when looking at what was the best thing there, well, I'm sure a lot of people would like me to build apartments. It would be great right across the street from the park. They don't even have to have much because they can go play over there. But for what I need and what would work for me to be able to keep going with my, I guess I would say it, my retirement plan down the road, this would work the best for me. as I stated before, having the properties that I've had there and what I've felt like I've done on the west side, I'm not trying to build something that's ugly. I wouldn't ever even think about that. I've got a lot of pride over there. I've been there 55 years. I can tell you a lot of stories. I can tell you a lot of changes. I happen to be one of the people who I feel like has changed that side of town. That building that's there right now on the corner that you guys talk about, that was condemned at one time. It's nothing like it was. And I would continue to keep doing that, but it also has to be feasibly at some time for me to be able to afford. This is the one thing that I can do right now. I'm not trying to take up the whole lot so that later on I can do something, but it is something that I am trying to also do that in my mind, if it gets pushed away, then it's going to stay like it's going to stay, and it can for a long, long time. At some point, I'm going to retire. I'll sell it and somebody else will do whatever they want with it. But I'm just trying to better it as it is right now and help me to be able to keep some of the things that are worth money inside, and they just don't go bad because I don't have anywhere else to store them. I guess if there's anything here, do you guys have any questions for me regarding what you might want to know?
Anybody?
Or what my plan, my greater plan, or
We're kind of stuck. We're going to be able to work with what's in front of us on this, but does anybody have any questions for the applicant? Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Christy Roberts with Dwell. I am the representative of the applicant, and I do want to speak to the accessory use in the B2 zone that city staff claims doesn't exist. And they're exactly right. There is no definition of accessory use within the code. And I think that's really where we've come to head here. We've all acknowledged that the building on the east side of Johnny's property has been improved. It's been improved to meet the commercial building standards. It has the wall plane changes, it has stone veneer, it has roof plane changes, and that is the building that is accessible to the public. This building will not be accessible to the public. We've added some roof plane changes, say that 3 times, to the west side just to help with the appearance of it, but it's not going to be a building that is accessible to the public. And I think that's where the hardship is here, is when a business needs a structure that is for their business use only, our code does not have accommodations for that. The accommodations that we're asking for relief from are specifically for the pedestrian access that they talked about in the B2 zone. And we do not have that in this situation. And it is a hardship that our code doesn't provide for that for the businesses in our community. And I would like you to consider that alternative perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. Brett, state your name again for the record.
Okay, name is Brett Glass, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. I am a former member of the Board of Adjustment, which was integrated into the Planning Commission at a time when they changed the number of members so that that could be done. And so I've sat on the commission. I've on the board, and I've heard similar things when I was sitting there. And well, at the time, I remember speaking to this sort of an issue, and really taking note of the fact that that before we had the UDC, when we had simple pyramidal zoning, you knew what you could do with your property, and you could do things that were reasonable. Now, the UDC has to specify every little thing that you can or can't do. And I think the idea of having a building on a commercial property to contain things and actually improve the aesthetics is a wonderful idea. But no one happened to think of putting it in that section of the UDC. Now, I don't know whether you can find the authority under state statute to grant this variance sitting as the Board of Adjustment. But if not, you should definitely consider it as a member of the full, as members of the full Planning Commission, because in that role, you can approve the variance. So I think that if you don't grant this, although I think you should, that you consider it in that role when you can pass it, because I think it's a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. Anybody else? All right, I'll open it up to the commission.
I found the comment that was provided very useful and compelling, but I do think there's a clear avenue to address it, and it would be in the role of addressing changes to the code, which we would do as the Planning Commission, and not through the legal requirements that we need to apply to this variance request. So I plan to move to deny it.
Anybody else?
Would this sort of thing be involved in the comprehensive plan? It's being updated, changing code and things that, have been demonstrated unnecessary or over restricted?
Oh, yeah, I intend to
bring
it up.
It could be, but it's very clear that the whatever's done in the plan, the comprehensive plan, would have to be translated into changes in the code, because that is what has the legal effect.
What I would really like to see is a code change that lives up to what the comprehensive plan, the Thrive plan, all that they talk about economic development in all our plans, but not one of them has any specifics on it, on improving the code. This is a good place to start. And I think there's a lot of room in the UDC for improvement that would help with economic development. I think that this particular hill is not the one to die on, right? But we do need to see what we can do to get local businesses and businesses that are coming into town, give them a better chance. I ran a business in this town for 30 years. And I had to close my business because when they sold my building out from under me, there was literally no place else to move. Granted, I was 72 years old, and it was time for me my hands were shot, my rest of my body was shot, so it was time to quit. But there was literally no place to move to. We don't have any commercial space that is affordable, has decent power and heat and light. There's a real dearth to it. And I think we need a code change. And I'm going to push for it. I'm going to have to sit down with staff and figure out how we could change this code, because I think there's a lot of things in this, particularly in 1514, that are too restrictive. But 1514 is as rigid as it gets. So that's my opinion on it. The chair will entertain a motion.
I move to deny the request variance from Laramie Municipal Code 15.14.090.d.2. Then the LMC 15.14.090.d.5, LMC 15.14.100.c, and LMC 15.18.010 for the construction of a construction industry use building at 460 West Garfield based on findings of fact and conclusions of law as outlined below.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right. Any further discussion? We'll go to a vote. We need a roll call vote for that.
I just do have one question.
Yeah.
We talked about the text amendment. What's the path forward for that? Because I think we all recognize, this kind of challenge, if you will, and what is the path forward that we can take there as the
Emmett could probably address that, or Phil.
Chair, through you. Absolutely. So online we have the PDF that goes over the text amendment process. So basically, you'll go to the section of code that you want. It's an application online, similar to how all of our building, planning, engineering applications are. And you'll go ahead and submit that for review. The one thing I'll say is like when making text amendment changes, it's beneficial to be really specific about what changes you're making and be cognizant of maybe some other areas that tie back to that section of code. And you can always meet with staff as well if you would like us to kind of take through kind of all the impacting sections, because you may just look at a piece and be like, okay, that's easy enough to get rid of entirely, but it may be referenced by other places. So we can work with you all on that. It'll then be submitted. Staff will review just to make sure, again, like if there's any unforeseen consequences and if it's generally supported by the comprehensive planning efforts. We'll then go ahead, it'll come before Planning Commission, who will make a recommendation to City Council, and then it will then ultimately be decided by City Council. It's similar to kind of the annual code cleanup change that is seen before this body each year.
All right, thank you.
And by you mean the applicant or their representative, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
All right, we'll call for the vote. Clerk?
Pacino,
Aye.
Heiser White, Moody,
Aye.
O'Toole,
Aye.
Schneider,
No.
and Matamore.
No.
That is 4 yeses, 2 nos, and 1 vacancy.
Very good. The denial is passed. Chair will entertain a motion.
Move we adjourn as Board of Adjustment.
Got a second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Yeah.